welcome to another episode of the Dragon Within Saga weekly video blog. I appreciate you tuning in, and we're going to be discussing, actually we're starting a series where I'm going to discuss each one of the characters and their path and convergence a little bit more. Major spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear about the later chapters or whatnot, please turn the video out, because there will be spoilers in here. And the first character we're going to talk about is, really the narrator, where it all begins, and that's with Drin Martos. And, well, who is he? Well, Drin he's a 16-year-old boy who is the son of Intari and Dolfiana Martos, and he lives on his father's farm. He's been a farmer, his whole life, and that's what his father was before his father went away to a selection, and then his father returned to the same farm with a woman who would eventually become Drin's mother, Dolfiana. And so Drin's only known the farm. That's all what his little world is. And, he derived from a great respect from his father. That's all Drin wants. He doesn't want anything else. His two, sisters, twin sisters, Hythlin and Jonola, may be a bit different in their idea of adventure. Hythlin is always off with her own adventures, and Jonola in tow. And while Hythlin is very boisterous, very outwardly opinionated, and will let you know, Jonola, although physically is almost identical as Hythlin, is very much the opposite in that she's more quiet, more stoically obedient, and more of a quote-unquote proper child. But Drin, while his sisters go on adventures of their own and pretending that, Drin doesn't do any of that. He has no desire for that. He doesn't acknowledge that. That's not part of his world nor reality. His world and reality is the farm, and it centers around the stability of his father. So Drin has no huge ambitions other than to finish his time with the selection, as every 16-year-old boy in the Silver Empire must do, and then he wants to return back to his father's farm and help working with him, spending all the day there. That's essentially Drin. And physically, Drin is he's very athletic, very coordinated, which will come into play and allow him to learn a lot of the fighting techniques that he'll be taught later on when he becomes an assassin. That's a spoiler, I told you, in the later on chapters, and we'll see how that physicality helps him, in a relatively short amount of time, not master it, but become a very quick study to his assassin mentor. Education-wise, Drin is, he's a very intelligent boy, and his father is very intelligent, so is his mother. And his father and mother had instructed them and taught them how to read and write. They spent a lot of time talking about different topics or whatnot, and one of the things we'll learn is that Intari, Drin's father, was very influential in the magically enhanced food movement that's going on in Avendir, that's starting in Avendir, whatnot. Very outspokenly against it, but in an eloquent manner. And we'll see that Drin gets a lot of his speaking ability from his father and observing it and from that. So he's not an uneducated farm boy. He's quite educated based on what his father and mother were able to teach him as he was growing up to 16. So he can read, he can write, and he can speak quite well, actually. But then we come to a little bit of in every story, characters go through a progression, and they're always faced with choices, whether it's choices that they inherently know they have to make, or a choice in which way you want to take the character. Drin faces that as well, and he faces that when his father dies, and he dies on their journey to the silver selection that Drin has to be a part of. So the choice of which way the character goes, does Drin successfully make and attend the silver selection and get chosen into a profession to spend his time, or does he not? And it really comes down to who was Drin and where his psychology was anchored, and was that anchor taken away? Well, that psychology for Drin, the anchor for his reality, was his father. It represented a constant greater than, or on the same par as the rising and setting of the sun and the stars in the sky, and the tides of the ocean and gravity itself. There were those, and then there was his father right next to those. And if we take any one of those other four primal forces away, the world deteriorates. So when we take Drin's father away, and part of his role in it, or what he blamed himself. We take Drin's world away. So with that understanding of who Drin was, it was interesting to see where Drin was going to go. And of course, then the decision was made for me when writing. Drin wouldn't make it to the silver selection. Something would happen. It's not that he would consciously choose not to go. He would try to go because he's still the obedient son. He's still a good-natured boy, and that he wants to continue living up to what he felt his father would do. But he would not have the emotional and psychological wherewithal to continue that path, excuse me, by the way, to get there successfully. And had it not been for the boy then Isolti, he may not have even made it to the end of their destination. But he did, he made it, and he registered. But he had to spend a day in this huge city that he'd never even seen. I mean, he grew up on a farm, right? So while there, situations happen. Emotionally, he ends up crying, and but before that, he witnesses. There are two turning points for him. One is when he witnesses the assassins from the guild carry out a mark, and he marvels at how fearless they were and how they acted with surety that there was no chance for them not to be successful. They knew they were going to be before they even began, right? And then another moment where Drin gets beaten up by one of the street beggars, where he meets one of the assassins, not the one he saw carried out, but a different one. And the assassin gives him a choice of being able to or follow a path to accept all the ability he can, and to have no fear. And that really appealed to Drin, because seeing his father die, constructed or allowed a lot of thoughts to creep into him about how he'd always been afraid, how he'd always been unsure. Yeah, he was able to do things, but there was always fear with it. And a lot of the fear was generated because he just never felt completely, worthy. So when presented with this opportunity to finally get rid of that fear and become what he saw and marveled at, he chose to accept it. And that's where we see Drin's psychology play into the part where, he's not going to make the silver selection, although he's trying to. He doesn't have the ability to make it, so that choice was made for him, and then me as the writer. And then also his decision to become an assassin. Having his father removed from his life, there is now nothing anchoring him to his previous life. Much like if gravity was gone, there's nothing anchoring us to the earth. Now Drin's free to choose something that would remove his fear as the main motivation, instead of being a good son for his father, and that was becoming an assassin. And that begins a whole other storyline that we continue in this book, and then Bloodless as well. So yeah, in terms of Convergence, that's essentially Drin, and that's why these moments were not easy to make, but were plainly made once I laid out, okay, who was Drin? Drin is this. Therefore, this is going to happen to him. So it's not like, it was kind of cool because I just had to write what Drin would naturally be, and that's part of it as a writer, is learning how to let your characters write the story for you. I mean, characters just can't make decisions because you want them to make a decision. They have to make decisions because of who they are, and if you deviate from that, now it becomes a constructed story derived to simply prove a point. And when I was writing the first chapters of Convergence, I didn't essentially want Drin to become an assassin, but it presented to him, and of course he was going to make that choice because of his psychology. And that's Drin. Next time we're probably going to discuss Jessalyn, who is the antagonist of the whole story. At least one of the antagonists. In the beginning, we find out he is the antagonist. And that'll be cool as well. So, please tune in next time when you hear about how Jessalyn turns from, innocent, little sickly orphan boy into the instrument of Satan. And there's a progression there, and we'll look at that progression in detail. So again, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Dragon Within Saga weekly video blog. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed telling you about it. If you're interested in the book, please buy it. You'll find the link in the comments. So on Love and Light Productions website. So, and please Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want. Yeah, just thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it, guys. Have a good day, and always remember, release your dragon within. Have a great day.